Something really weird is happening in Britain. People are leaving, and they're leaving at scale. And it's not just the ultra wealthy, but regular families and young professionals. And it's not just a trend, it's become an entire movement. But why? Why are people packing up their bags and abandoning a so-called prosperous nation? And where on earth are they going? I wanted to understand what's going on here, and to get the answers, we need to rewind the clock and go back in time to where it all began.
Do you know what? He's right. There's not certain type of ethnic group, certain type of class, certain type of age group, whatever. You can't pin it down to any specific group or individual. It is just everyone from everywhere.
Now, in the 1960s, Britain was a land of opportunity. My grandparents moved here from the Caribbean, lured by promises of better opportunity and a better life. Back then, houses were affordable, jobs were stable, and the wages were enough to support a family. I mean, you could buy a home for just a few £1,000s. And to put that into perspective, the average house price in the 1960s was just £3,600, just 4 times the average annual wage. You compare that to today, the average house price is £280,000.
What?
More than 9.
You could buy a house for 3,600. Bro, these days, this is monthly rent. Okay, so let's put it into perspective. It was 4 times the average salary. Now is 9 times. It's more than doubled. And this is 2020. It's gone a lot worse now. UK, what is going on? No wonder why people are just leaving in huge numbers. Political instability, crazy house prices, uncertain future. They've always had gloomy weather, but if you add all these things on top of that gloomy weather, now the gloomy weather is a lot more noticeable. There's just so many things that are going crazy.
10 times the average annual wage. Housing wasn't just a dream you hustled for. It was a part of life. The middle class was thriving and upward mobility felt almost guaranteed. That was the promise of Britain. You work hard and you can build a stable and prosperous future. But over time, that promise began to unravel. Fast forward to the 1980s and everything started to change. Margaret Thatcher's government embraced free market policies, privatizing industries and introducing the right to buy scheme, which meant for millions of council tenants, the chance to buy homes felt like a dream come true. But there was a catch. You see, for every council home sold, fewer were built. And by the end of the decade, the stock of affordable housing had plummeted, leaving future generations to face a severe housing shortage.
20,000 jobs have been lost in Britain's coal industry in the past year. Another 20,000 are expected to go in the next.
This is also a decade where industries like coal, steel, and manufacturing collapsed. Entire communities were left without work as factories and mines were shut down. And between 1980...
So this isn't just something that was out of nowhere. You know what I'm saying? Someone pressed a button and then boom, all of a sudden, all these crises. This is something that's been in the works for 20, 30 years. As you said, the government, this Thatcher government, she did a scheme where there were more houses that was being sold than built, if I'm correct. And yeah, this is now what's leading to more unsustainable demand and supply imbalance.
In 1990, UK lost over 1.5 million manufacturing jobs. But at the same time, London's financial sector boomed, creating a new elite of bankers and traders. The result? A widening gap between the haves and the have-nots. Inequality, measured by the Gini coefficient, rose sharply during this period, marking the beginning of the erosions of Britain's middle class. By the 1990s, things seemed to improve.
We were elected because as a party today, we represent the whole of this nation. And we will govern for the whole of this nation, every single part of it.
The Cold War had ended, and Britain entered what economists call the long expansion. Now, from 1992 to 2000, GDP grew at an average rate of 3% per year, and unemployment fell from over 10% to under 5%, and wages rose steadily. It was a decade of stability and prosperity, a time that many look back upon with nostalgia. Now, to illustrate this story better, I'm going to introduce 3...
Okay, so the 90s, they almost did like a little mini comeback. I'm assuming that comeback lasted up until mid-2000s to late 2000s in the financial crisis.
Fictitious characters. And the first character in the story is Ada. Now, Ada started her nursing career for the NHS in 1993. And this was a hopeful era. She worked long shifts, but she felt like her efforts would actually pay off, that she could build a future, not only for herself, but for her family. But even in the midst of growth, the warning signs were emerging. Housing prices began to rise sharply between 1995 and 2000, where house prices increased by 50%, far outpacing wage growth. And while the deregulation of financial markets fueled economic growth, it also created a fragile foundation that would collapse in the next decade. Then came 2008, a financial crisis that rocked the decade. The 2008 financial crisis hit like an earthquake, wiping out savings, collapsing banks, and leaving millions struggling to make ends meet. Now Ada's wages stagnated. Her children, now they're...
So what happens when you turn blind eye, especially to these big establishments where you let them get away with certain things. You know what I'm saying? You don't hold them to the same standard as your average Joe on the street. And yeah, this is inevitable. The crash, the financial crisis. You know, banks are too big to fail. And then even if they do fail, it's on the taxpayers' responsibility to bail them out. Crazy. Now when you think about it, it makes sense why people are leaving the UK, because they have no trust in the leadership.
20s couldn't even afford a home. The average age for first-time home buyers rose up to 30, from just 23 in the 1960s.
You could buy a house at 23 in the 60s. You could buy a house at 23 in the 60s. By then, people would probably be settled in, have family, have wife, have kids. Now, for that to happen, you've got to be looking at mid-30s, early 40s.
Post-COVID, a new trend emerged. Remote work and online businesses became the new norm, untethering jobs from geography. And here we introduce our second character into the story, James. Now, James is a 23-year-old working in remote sales for a tech company. And for him, there's little incentive to stay in the UK. You see, James earns a London salary of £8,000 a month, but he works in Bali, where everything is way cheaper. He leverages geographic arbitrage, which means to earn in a stronger currency and transact in a weaker currency. Now for him, the high costs, the cold weather, the bad vibes, the long commutes of the UK simply don't make sense anymore. And James isn't alone. Across the UK, young professionals are asking the same question. Why stay in a country where everything costs more and offers less? And that brings me to the final character in the story. We have Michael, who is a multi-millionaire agency owner who earns over £2 million in profit per year. But the unfortunate part of living in the UK is taxes. For someone like Michael, UK's 45% tax rate and the high cost of living feels punitive. He's moved to Dubai in his luxury penthouse, where there's no income tax and the lifestyle and network is unmatched.
Just before we get to this section, yeah, I think remote job is going to open the eyes for a lot of people in order to move abroad, and then the government is going to realise this, and then they're going to tackle this down like a flipping rugby, fam. Do you get it? So I think the safest way to go about remote work is in order to get your own business where you can work remotely from anywhere in the world. Because if you're working for a tech company, if you're working for any good company, you know, the government can just place sanctions on them, and then the company will place sanctions on you saying you can't leave the UK, you can't leave the UK essentially. And I think that's going to be the future. So for those of you who are thinking about having a remote job, working for a company out overseas, I think because it's going to be so available and open to everyone, the government is going to have to bring some sort of sanction into it, or else it's going to lose everyone. What they're going to do, they're going to be paying wages to people that are not going to be spending the money in the country. It's going to be unsustainable. It will literally fall. So they're going to have to place some sort of sanction in order to combat that.
To mention that he has better safety.
However, the UAE thing, they can't do nothing about it because this person is not, he can do whatever he's doing in the UAE. You get it? Because he has his own agency. So it's going to be a lot tougher for them to tackle that.
He can leave his penthouse door unlocked with his expensive Rolexes and not have to butt an eyelid that someone is going to go and steal it from him. Now, whether it's James or whether it's Michael, there's no denying that UK is losing its brightest minds and its wealthiest citizens in the largest brain and wealth drain.
Only that, soon enough, if not already now, it's going to be the average people, the average Joe, the person that is getting impacted by this the most. And like I said, with the rise of remote job, if you're smart, look for a remote job, entry level position. Even if they're paying you 20,000, you can go to a country like Bali, where that 20,000 is going to make you live like a, you know, high-end middle class with better weather, a lot of advantages over there.
So you might be asking the question, why is everyone leaving the UK? And it's not just about the taxes or the high cost of living. It's about a system that no longer rewards effort, no longer rewards opportunity. Britain feels like a country that punishes its citizens at both ends of the spectrum, squeezing out the middle class and driving out the wealthy. And if this continues, the consequences are profound. You see, with every James who leaves, Britain loses innovation, spending power, and future potential. And with every Mike who relocates to Dubai or Monaco, it loses out on tax revenue and economic stability. And what will be left behind is a society under strain, a hollowed out middle class, overstretched public services, and an economy unable to compete. And if this exodus continues, Britain faces a dystopian future. Public services will collapse under the weight of austerity and a shrinking tax base. Urban decay will spread, with empty high streets, rising homelessness, communities abandoned by investment. Inequality will continue to soar, with the wealthy living in gated luxury, whilst the rest struggle to make ends meet. Now, by 2030, it's predicted that over 1.5 million Britons are expected to leave. The pound is weakening and the Gini coefficient is at its highest level in over 40 years. Britain risks becoming a relic of a once prosperous past, a nation that once promised opportunity, now defined by decline. The UK stands at crossroads. Can it rebuild the opportunity that once defined it? Or will we watch its people and its future slip away into the shadows?
Great video. Shout outs to Nathan Peters, 10k subscribers. He's gonna get to 100 easy. Subscribe to him.
Nathan here. Hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah, just final thoughts on that. What a video, by the way. Shout outs to Nathan. Now I want to bring the questions to you. For those of you that are living in the UK, or even if you're American living in America, I think you are facing similar problems. I hate this drill, bruv. I hate this drill with a passion. Where do you see yourself? Do you see yourself living in the UK within the next 2 to 5 years? Do you see yourself living in the UK, or do you see yourself packing your bags, getting your passport, and going to Bali, going to Indonesia, going to somewhere where you get a lot more bang for your buck? It is predicted, as we've seen in the video, by 2030, 1.5 million people are going to leave the UK. I think it might be a bit more than that, depending on how people open their eyes. And this is the thing, no one is winning. Shall I tell you why no one wins from this? Because as the UK goes downhill, the power of the pound goes downhill. And people that are leaving the UK that are getting the salaries of pounds, you know what I'm saying, the salary of the pound, you know, that their money kind of goes downhill as well. So they're losing out. Even though you're leaving the country, you're still losing out a bit. What I think needs to happen is, first of all, the government needs to pump a lot of money in order to make wages equal to the effort and hard work people are putting in. Okay, they might be at deficit for a few years, but at least the morale of the country will go up. People will return back. More people will work. More taxes. Do you get it? I think this is mostly economics. I think economic instability is what's letting the UK down. These cost of living is impossible to obtain because the wages, not only are they not going up, they're staying the same or even going down in some cases, but the cost of living is going higher and higher and higher. Rents, the food, your average weekly shopping, petrol, car, and the local businesses are seeing this now. They're raising everything up just so they can survive this. But who's going to ultimately be losing out? You, the average consumer. So yeah, anyways, let me know, continue discussion in the comments below. Do you see yourself living in the UK? Do you see yourself leaving the UK? Do you see yourself maybe 6 months in, 6 months out? Whatever the future holds for you, let me know in the comments below.